The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as Cuba Gooding Jr. took the stand, his presence instantly shifting the mood. His face showed the weight of years spent under public scrutiny, his legal battles, his tarnished reputation, and the burden of a truth he had kept buried for too long. As he adjusted the microphone, his hands trembled slightly, betraying the emotional gravity of the moment. This was not just another court appearance. It was a reckoning. For the first time under oath, he would speak about his relationship with Sean "Diddy" Combs, not to defend himself or shift blame, but to expose a world that thrived on silence and fear. He looked at the jury, then out into the gallery, before finally speaking. "I'm not here to protect anyone anymore," he said, voice low but firm. "I'm here to tell the truth, even if it hurts." Those words hung in the air, signaling the beginning of a testimony that would shake Hollywood to its core. Cuba's voice remained steady as the prosecutor walked him through his early encounters with Diddy. What began as casual industry events, parties, yacht trips, red carpets, soon evolved into something more exclusive, more controlled. He described Diddy as magnetic, someone who made everyone feel like they mattered. But beneath the charm was a quiet dominance, an unspoken rule that saying no wasn't an option. When asked about the infamous yacht party, where Diddy allegedly tried to push Lil Rod onto him, Cuba visibly tensed. He recalled how uneasy he felt, how the energy shifted when Lil Rod was seated next to him. He didn't belong there, Cuba admitted, voice cracking slightly. He denied any wrongdoing, swearing he never touched Lil Rod or engaged in anything inappropriate. But the pressure was real. "You don't say no to Sean Combs," he whispered, eyes glistening. As he spoke, tears welled up. Tears not for himself, but for what he witnessed and failed to stop. He wiped his eyes, composed himself, and continued, ready to peel back the layers of secrecy that had shielded powerful men for far too long. As the questioning deepened, Cuba described the unsettling atmosphere at Diddy's private gatherings, events that were less about celebration and more about control. Invitations became harder to get, and once inside, guests were expected to follow strict rules. Phones were collected at the door, masks were handed out, and attendees were dressed in robes, turning these parties into surreal experiences, masked as entertainment. "It wasn't just fun," Cuba said, shaking his head. "It was orchestrated." He explained how the vibe changed over the years, how laughter gave way to tension, and how certain people disappeared after speaking out. "People think I'm saying this now to save myself," he told the court. "I'm not. I've already fallen. This isn't about redemption. It's about stopping what's still going on." Then came the most chilling part, what he heard behind closed doors. Screams, crying, women being rushed out through side exits. He didn't see physical violence, but he knew something was terribly wrong. "We all knew," he said, looking down, "and we all stayed silent." Cuba paused, collecting his thoughts before diving deeper into the moments that haunted him most. One such memory came rushing back, a hallway encounter at one of Diddy's LA parties. He had wandered upstairs, trying to find a quiet place to breathe, when he heard a girl scream. He turned the corner and saw a security guard slam a door shut, blocking whatever was happening inside. "I asked what was going on," Cuba recalled, his voice trembling. "The guard just looked at me and said, 'This room's off limits, Mr. Gooding.'" That simple statement stopped him in his tracks. He didn't press further. He didn't ask questions. He simply walked away. Years later, seeing some of those same women come forward, their eyes filled with fear and pain, reopened old wounds. "I could have done something," he admitted, wiping away fresh tears. But I didn't. And that's what haunts me the most. He looked toward the jury, his expression raw. I thought if I stayed quiet, I'd be safe. But silence doesn't protect. It only enables. He took a deep breath, bracing for what came next, knowing that every word he spoke was peeling back another layer of the carefully constructed illusion that protected the powerful. The weight of Hollywood's complicity loomed large as Cuba detailed the culture of fear that allowed Diddy's influence to go unchecked for so long. It wasn't just about one man. It was about an entire system built on silence, intimidation, and leverage. He described how NDAs were used not just to protect secrets, but to weaponize them against those who might speak out. Diddy had cameras everywhere, he revealed. Some visible, others hidden, not just for memories, but for control. He recalled how phones were searched upon entry, how careers vanished overnight for those who dared question the status quo. Even those who weren't directly involved knew enough to stay quiet. There were dozens of people at those parties, actors, producers, athletes. They saw the same things, maybe worse, he said, voice heavy with regret. And they said nothing, just like I did. The silence, he insisted, was the real sickness. It allowed predators to operate unchecked, thriving in an environment where power was currency and truth was expendable. People think Hollywood is a dream, he said, staring at the ceiling. But sometimes, it's just a polished nightmare. As the courtroom absorbed his words, it became clear this wasn't just about Diddy. It was about an industry that had long protected its monsters. When asked why he decided to break his silence now, Cuba didn't hesitate. He spoke of personal redemption, not for himself, but for those who suffered in silence while he remained complicit. He mentioned his son, explaining how fatherhood reshaped his perspective. I realized I couldn't raise him to do the right thing if I hadn't done it myself, he said, his voice thick with emotion. He also credited the bravery of Cassie and Lil Rod, whose testimonies inspired him to step forward. If they could risk everything to speak the truth, so could I, he added. He acknowledged that many would doubt him due to his own past legal troubles, but he refused to let that stop him. I messed up. I hurt people. I served time. I paid settlements, he admitted. I carry that shame every day. But what I'm talking about now goes beyond me. This is about a system, a sickness, a machine that feeds on silence and thrives on fear. He looked directly at the camera streaming the proceedings across the globe. The truth matters. Your past mistakes don't disqualify you from protecting others. And if you stay silent long enough, you become part of the problem. With those words, he wiped away another tear, no longer afraid to show vulnerability. I won't be part of the problem anymore, he declared. The courtroom sat in stunned silence as Cuba concluded his testimony, the impact of his words reverberating far beyond those walls. His story was not just about Diddy. It was about a culture of complicity, a network of power and fear that stretched across Hollywood and beyond. He had painted a picture of a world where silence was enforced, where truth was buried under layers of money, fame, and threats. As the judge called for a recess, Cuba remained seated, rubbing his face, whispering something only the microphones caught. God forgive me. When he returned, his posture was different, more resolute, more at peace. He didn't wait for a question this time. Instead, he leaned into the microphone and said, I have to speak on this next part because I saw things that night I can't unsee, and I can't keep acting like I didn't. He proceeded to describe a weekend retreat in the Hollywood Hills, a supposed birthday celebration that quickly turned into something else entirely. Masks were handed out, guests lined up like cattle. and Diddy stood at the center like a king overseeing a ritual. "That's when I knew," Cuba said, voice breaking. "That house was a graveyard of innocence." He described how he was warned to look away, how even mentioning what he saw could cost him everything. But now, with nothing left to lose, he was determined to make sure the world listened. Cuba went on to recount another chilling experience, one that stuck with him for years. At a Las Vegas party, he noticed a young woman being pulled down a hallway, her eyes silently pleading for help. He saw the desperation in her face, the fear in her posture, but he did nothing. "I just walked away," he admitted, his voice thick with regret. "I told myself she'd be fine, that it wasn't my place, that I didn't see enough to say anything. But deep down, I knew." He described how the industry conditioned people to turn a blind eye, how power disguised itself as hospitality and exclusivity. "You see this industry from the outside and think everyone's living the dream," he said, looking around the courtroom. "But when you're inside, you realize the real currency isn't money, it's secrets." He explained how Diddy allegedly used those secrets as leverage, ensuring that people stayed silent by threatening to expose their own scandals. "He had dirt on everyone," Cuba said bluntly, "and people knew that if he had something on you, you kept quiet. If he didn't, you still kept quiet, just in case." The weight of his words settled over the room like a fog, forcing everyone to confront the uncomfortable reality that complicity wasn't always active participation. It was often passive silence. By the time the prosecutor reached the final segment of Cuba's testimony, the courtroom was completely still. The air was thick with the weight of everything he had revealed: the masks, the parties, the screams, the disappearances, the silencing of voices. Now he was asked to summarize what he wanted the world to take from his words. He didn't hesitate. "Silence is a chain," he said, gripping the edge of the witness stand. "And I broke mine. I want people to know that you don't have to be perfect to speak out. You just have to be honest. You just have to be done with the lies." He spoke of Hollywood's addiction to power, how Diddy operated like a dealer, offering validation in exchange for loyalty. "I know because I was one of them," he admitted. "And it cost me my career, my reputation, maybe even my soul." He adjusted his seat, exhaustion creeping into his voice. "I lost years trying to rebuild what I'd broken in myself, and I'll never fully get back what I lost. But I can be a witness. I can be a voice." Suddenly, his composure cracked again. Not from guilt, but from relief. "I can't keep carrying it," he whispered. "I can't keep pretending I didn't see what I saw." He stood, unasked, and addressed the room like a man confessing his sins to the world. "I'm sorry. To the women, to the people who thought I was better, to the ones I didn't save. I'm sorry." He sat back down, drained. The prosecutor simply said, "Thank you, Mr. Gooding," and rested the case. No more spin, no more speculation, just the truth, raw, human, and long overdue.